Yeah! Hi kids, and welcome to Disney Animation Reviews. I'm Josiah Melky, and today we're talking about Walt Disney's 19th animated feature film, The Jungle Book. And this is a very personal film to Walt because it was the last animated Disney film, feature film that he personally supervised. He died before he could see it released. The story of how he got to Jungle Book dates back to the early 1960s. If you know the story of the Jungle Book, it's a book by Rudyard Kipling that came out in the late 1800s. According to a behind-the-scenes feature I saw years ago on a home video release of the film, Walt had actually first caught the attention of Kipling's book in the late 1930s, but didn't acquire the film rights until 1962. It was storyman Bill Peet, who was the sole story guy on Disney's last two animated features, 101 Dalmatians and The Sword and the Stone, that suggested they do Jungle Book next, telling Walt they could easily animate animals, and Walt immediately bought the idea. Bill Peet initially wanted to stay truer to Kipling's book, which was a lot darker and more mysterious than anything Disney had done before, but it wasn't what Walt had in mind, and after Sword and the Stone didn't do so good, Walt decided to be more involved in story meanings for the Jungle Book. One of the first things he did was when he disregarded Pete's original idea and assigned new story credit to Larry Clemens and some other guys at Disney. One of the first things he did was he told them not to read the book. Clemens did look at the book to see what the story was like, and he noticed it wasn't really a full narrative, so he decided Mowgli having to go to the man village would be what they would do at the end, and then they'd have to come up with different adventures for him to have that would, but all the adventures would be tied together to get Mowgli to the man village at the end of the film. At the same time they were working on Jungle Book, Disney also kept releasing live-action films, including what would be his most acclaimed movie ever, the live-action hit musical film, Mary Poppins. Critical reception for Mary Poppins when it came out in the late summer of 1964 was overwhelming. It's one of the few Disney films to have a rare perfect 100% rating on the Rotten Tomatoes site and earned 13 Academy Award nominations, the most for any most Academy Award nominations for any Disney film before or since. 13 nominations, that's pretty sweet. And won 5 Oscars, including, but not limited to, Julie Andrews, who starred in the film as Mary, winning Best Actress, which is amazing because that was her first film role, and the Sherman Brothers won both music Oscars, Best Score and Best Original Song for Chim Chim Cheree. Also during the 60s, Walt was working on new theme park attractions for Disneyland, like the Pirates of the Caribbean, and one of my personal favorites, It's a Small World. But going back to the Jungle Book, Walt was more into the characters and the setting than the actual Kipling story, and became very involved in making sure his version fit with these characters and story, but made it fun for families. The film premiered in fall of 1967, to be precise, October 18th, exactly 10 months and 3 days after Walt's unfortunate passing. Luckily, the film was an immediate box office success and got really good reviews, which led the Disney animators to start training new people to take their places someday, and a triumphant future lay ahead. But for now, let's talk about The Jungle Book, the actual movie. At the start of the film, Bagheera the Panther, voiced by Winnie the Pooh narrator Sebastian Cabot, tells us that he lives in the jungles of India and came across Mowgli, a man cub abandoned as an infant in the wild. He takes the boy to live with a family of wolves, and they happily accept him. 10 years later, Mowgli has grown up into a happy, playful young man cub, and loves his life with the wolves, but when Shere Khan the tiger threatens to kill him, Bagheera decides it's time to take Mowgli to the man village where he'll be safe. But Mowgli doesn't want to leave, and meets up with Baloo the bear, who teaches him about the bare necessities to forget about your worries and your strife. The film progresses with Baloo, Mowgli, and Bagheera having these great adventures together, having run-ins with characters like Colonel Hadi the elephant and his herd of elephants, the Dawn Patrol, King Louie and his band of monkeys, with King Louie wanting to learn about fire so he can be like Mowgli. I want to be like you. Kaa the hypnotic snake, and finally, Shere Khan himself. Having recently rewatched the film with my sister, the animated Jungle Book has a lot of fun stuff to enjoy. The story itself, while episodic like Pinocchio and Alice in Wonderland, isn't too big a problem as it was on Alice. The characters are all fun and interesting, and one of the great things about the cast in this film is the voice cast. This is one of the few animated Disney feature films to use celebrity voices. They had done that a little bit with Cliff Edwards and Walter Catlett as the voices of Jiminy Cricket and Honest John in Pinocchio, but Jungle Book really kicked it up a notch. Walt suggested radio comedian and a personal friend of his, Phil Harris, to voice Baloo. The animators weren't sure at first, but it all worked out. They also got Louis Prima, the famous jazz singer from Las Vegas, to do the voice of King Louie, which fit well with this King of the Swainers. Louis Prima did a great job. They also have Sebastian Cabot voicing Bagheera, and George Sanders, who was the master of suave characters, to do the voice of Shere Khan. They also got regular Disney voice actors in the film. J. Pat O'Malley is Colonel Hadi and one of the vultures. Sterling Holloway, Winnie the Pooh, is the voice of Kaa the Snake. If you read his voice acting resume, his credits range from Mr. Stork and Dumbo to Winnie the Pooh, so he seemed like a natural fit for Kaa. And in what would be her final film role, Disney voice actress Verna Felton did the voice of Colonel Hadi's wife. Jungle Book was her last film. She died the day before Walt Disney himself died. The director of the film was Wolfgang, or Wooly, Reitherman, a Disney animator who had succeeded to director on 101 Dalmatians and Sword in the Stone. At the time, his son, Bruce Reitherman, had voiced Christopher Robin for the first Winnie the Pooh short, Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, and they originally had somebody else to do the voice of Mowgli, but his voice changed in the years that they were working on Jungle Book, and because Bruce had just voiced Christopher Robin, his father, Wooly Reitherman, suggested Bruce do the voice of Mowgli, and he did a great job. Another great thing I like about the Jungle Book is the music. Sure, the animation is great, but my favorite things were the voice cast and the music. Originally, back when they had Bill Pete's original darker storyline, they had a dark and mysterious song score by composer Terry Gilkyson. But ultimately, it wasn't what Walt wanted, and the only thing they kept from the original song score by Gilkyson was the Bare Necessities, Baloo's signature song, which, ironically enough, went on to get nominated for Best Original Song at the Oscars. All the other songs were written by longtime Disney songwriters Richard and Robert Sherman, who had started at Disney in the early 1960s and had just won Oscars for their music on Mary Poppins. Their songs are great too. Aside from Bare Necessities, my personal favorite of the ones the Sherman brothers wrote is King Louie's song, I Want to Be Like You. So Jungle Book has got everything. Great animation, great voice cast, great songs. I think maybe the only problem I have with this is it's not as exciting as other Disney films, because there's not a whole lot of action except for the King Louie scene after I Want to Be Like You and the climactic showdown with Shere Khan. And a lot of people complain about the ending where, spoiler alert, Mowgli goes back to the man village because he falls in love with a little girl who's getting water for the village and is singing a pretty little song, and he's immediately in love with her. It was actually Walt who suggested that idea, that rather than have Mowgli be forced to go back to the man village, if he saw this little girl singing a song and fell in love with her, that's what would get him to go back, as he had never seen another human before. To be honest, I thought this was a perfect way to get Mowgli back to the man village at the end. The little girl I thought was really cute, her song was pretty, and and great voice actress Darlene Carr, who actually was wandering around the Disney studios singing to herself one day, and the Sherman brothers had her record a demo of the song, and when it came time to cast her, Walt loved the recording so much, he thought, let's just cast Darlene, and that's how she got the part. So while the ending may not be suited to everybody, I think it's a cute ending, and overall The Jungle Book is a great movie. A great last final hurrah for Walt's legacy. Jungle Book's latest home video release is its Diamond Edition Blu-ray and DVD release from February 2014. As usual, they have old and new bonus features. Old bonus features include audio commentary, a 45-minute behind-the-scenes look on the making of the film, other featurettes, like one on the work of longtime Disney animators Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, and another one called The Lure of the Jungle Book, which shows how people like Pixar's Brad Bird and Disney animators like Andreas Deja and Glenn Keane were inspired by the Jungle Book to go into animation, and how the animation on characters in Jungle Book influenced animation on characters in films like The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, The Lion King, Tarzan, and Lilo and Stitch, among others. Disney's Song Selection, where you can sing along to your favorite songs from the film, a look at the long-lost Jungle Book character, Rocky the Rhino, and a music video for I Want to Be Like You by the Jonas Brothers from Disney Channel's Camp Rock films. Plus a Disneypedia on the different animals in the movie. New bonus features include 2 different introductions for the film itself, one from Walt's late daughter, Diane, the other from songwriter Richard Sherman. A feature where Diane, Richard Sherman, and Disney story artist Floyd Norman reflect on memories making the film. An alternate ending, another At Disney animation featurette, Disney Intermission, where pause the movie and you can sing along to your favorite songs karaoke style. You can also play them by themselves as a special feature. And a feature where Disney Channel stars Blake Michael and G. Hernelius from Dog with a Blog hang out together at Disney's Animal Kingdom. The DVD just includes the Rocky the Rhino featurette and the Disneypedia. Jungle Book had 2 spin-off TV shows. In the early 90s, they had Tailspin, where Baloo, now voiced by the late Ed Gilbert, works for a air cargo delivery force. And in the late 90s, they had the series Jungle Cubs, showing Baloo and the animals as kids and how they used to be friends. A live-action remake that was more akin to Kipling's original story, starring Jason Scott Lee as Mowgli. He was later the voice of David in Lilo and Stitch. The Kipling version came out in 1994 and was criticized for being more adult than the first movie, but was still a box office success. More notably, however, Disney Toon Studios released a theatrical sequel to the animated classic entitled The Jungle Book 2, and it was released to theaters Valentine's Day 2003. They released a movie to theaters on Valentine's Day. What's that all about? But anyway, in the sequel, Mowgli, now voiced by Haley Joel Osment, loves his life in the Man Village with his new little brother Ranjan, and Shanti, the girl that lured him in at the end of the first movie, but he misses his life in the jungle. So one day, he runs away from the Man Village and meets up with Baloo, now voiced by John Goodman. Also the voices of Pacha in The Emperor's New Groove, and Sully in Pixar's Monsters Incorporated films. However, he's eventually torn between staying in the jungle with Baloo or going back to the Man Village, where he's got friends and family that love him. Although the film was a box office success, matter of fact, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but it even did more successful at the box office than Disney's main house animated film Treasure Planet, which had just come out a couple months before Jungle Book 2. The story is pretty weak. It's mostly just a rehash of the first movie, with some plot changes, but they're few and far between, and the animation isn't all that good. But the voice cast is great, and it's got a couple of great new songs, Jungle Rhythm, sung by Mowgli and the Kids, and Wild, sung by Baloo and the Jungle Animals. Plus, they bring back old favorites from the first movie, like Bare Necessities and I Want to Be Like You, so that's good. Otherwise, pretty weak sequel. They should have just given it a direct-to-video release like originally planned. Another live-action remake, which was directly a live-action remake of the animated classic, was released to theaters spring 2016, and this Jungle Book turned out to be an even bigger hit than people thought, earning almost $1 billion worldwide and winning an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. Great cast, with voice talents by people like Bill Murray, Ben Kingsley, Idris Elba. Scarlett Johansson is the voice of Kaa, who's now a girl this time, and Christopher Walken is King Louie, who's now a Gigantopithecus. As it turns out, orangutans don't live in the jungles of India where the film takes place. This one I thought was also good, although I think little kids will probably like the animated version more. So that's my thoughts on The Jungle Book. Great success. Last animated film to have Walt's personal touch. I think he would have been very proud of how well it had done, and it kept the Disney Animation Studio going. But now that we've finished talking about Jungle Book, we've got some rough times ahead with animated Disney films that were either critically or financially successful for the most part, but it would still be several years before they had another really big hit on their hands with The Little Mermaid. So brace yourselves for the movies that we got coming up for the next several weeks. But we're out of time for today, so remember, when you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. See you soon!